Get your copy at www.novaalbion.com. I moved to San Francisco from New York when I was in my late 20s and soon embarked on a new and very lucrative career as an institutional fixed-income salesman. In my second year at Morgan Witter, I earned over $100,000 and was feeling proud of myself. When it became clear I would earn significantly more the following year, the managing partner of the office pulled me aside and said, "Now that you've got some money, don't put it up your nose or blow it on a fancy car. Buy a house in Marin County." In 1986, I did buy a house in Marin with a splendid view of the bay for $292,000. It was a one-story with 4 bedrooms at 35 Via Corona on Greenbrae Ridge, a graded stretch above Highway 101, not far from Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. The following year, I spent $25,000 putting in a large 2-tiered deck, a hot tub, a barbecue pit, and pathways filled with river rock. It was a sight to behold. I got married 3 years later and my wife and I held many, bring your most interesting friend, parties that were attended by more than 100 people. The house turned out to be one of the most amazing things that ever happened to me. The marriage, not so much. When it ended in a messy divorce, my ex got the house for a while, and I rented an apartment in San Francisco, taking full advantage of the club scene there, especially Club Galaxy and the Bottom Out, my 2 favorite night spots. At both, I met a lot of interesting characters and some deliciously free-spirited women. But in the mid-90s I got my house back, and the friends I made along my street were happy that I returned. One Saturday morning, I was chatting with my friend and neighbor Steven Stern. He lived just 3 houses away in his mother-in-law's house along with his wife and children. I mentioned how the water that always trickled out alongside my driveway had developed an oily sheen, and jokingly added, "I'll bet when Sir Francis Drake was here one of his men died and they dumped them in a pit with an oil lamp that's starting to leak 400 years later." Steve surprised me by saying, "Nope. But you're closer than you think. The treasure of Sir Francis Drake is buried along this ridge." "Treasure?" I said, grinning. "There are 7 billion people on this planet, and I imagine that every one of them would love to find a buried treasure. In a way that's what we stockbrokers feed on every day." He explained how in the mid-1970s his mother-in-law Mary had been repeatedly visited by a UC Berkeley professor, who told her that in 1936, Drake's famous plate of brass had been discovered right where her house was built in the mid-1950s. The professor had pestered Mary repeatedly, asking if he could go under the house with a metal detector to see what else he could find, but she wouldn't let him. Grandma, Mary, was one of the few original owners who still lived in the neighborhood. Hearing this story piqued my curiosity, so I talked to other neighbors to see what they could tell me about Drake and the alleged treasure. The sum of their various stories made clear to me why Drake was such a big deal in Marin County, where so many places are named for him. Over the course of the next year, I found myself thinking more and more about Drake and his treasure, until finally in the spring of 2000, through some unexpected twists and turns I became obsessed with it and with him to the point that I saw everything in my life related in some way to his. My initial research into the differences between the Julian and Gregorian calendar systems showed that there was some cosmic connection between our lives. When I pursued this theory and undertook the process of converting the calendars from one system to the other, I had mathematical evidence that there was a link between his death in 1596 and my birth in 1956. For over 400 years, there has been speculation about the possible location of Drake's landing site and the contents of the greatest buried treasure of all time. What follows is an account of my 20-year quest to provide definitive answers to these questions and the extreme measures and measurements that were undertaken to prove that Sir Francis Drake landed along the San Quentin Peninsula of Marin County in 1579 and claimed the land he called Nova Albion, for Queen Elizabeth I of England. Visit www.novaalbion.com to get your copy.